and get started in just a couple minutes. And if you have any questions that you haven't had a chance to answer yet, be sure to put them in the chat box. That way I can see them and answer them for you. So either in the chat box or in the Q&A, that would be excellent. This over here so I can see. Perfect. Morning, Matt. How are you today? Cool. Can you guys hear me, by the way? You just enter in the chat box if you can hear me. Excellent. Thanks, Paul. Good morning, Claude. Fantastic. Rock and roll. So I know this is, I mean, you guys are probably getting ready in your day or whatever. For me, I'm in Toronto, Canada, which is a slightly different time zone than I'm used to. And I'm in a hotel. And all morning I've been like, is the internet going to work? I've been running, I think I run like 30 speed tests today just to track to see if the speed would keep up. So it's not going to be too high tech, but hopefully you guys will be able to hear me and see me and everything you guys need out of this day. And hopefully it'll be a really great webinar. So just keep going in a couple minutes. I'm just pulling up a couple extra questions that came in yesterday. All right, everyone, we're just gonna go in about 1 minute here. Try to make sure that there's a good balance of time in advance to make sure that people have time to get settled in and do all the things. Sometimes Zoom doesn't work. Perfect. Hi, Janelle. Hi, Sabiha. Hi, Nelin. And I apologize if I'm pronouncing your names right. I'm doing my best. All righty. So it's 10 o'clock. So I wanted to, or 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific, whatever time it is, wherever you are in the world. And I wanted to get started on today's webinar. And really why I wanted to do today's webinar was just to do a live chat. to engage some of the folks that we have on YouTube, to engage some of the folks that we have on Facebook, to engage you as readers, and answer some of the questions that's been coming up. Because as I've been personally doing a lot of sessions from like all over Canada and the US, I've done a lot in the past 2 weeks. There's a lot of sort of uncertainty going on in the world with this coronavirus, COVID-19, and just a lot of sort of anxiety, stress, questions. And I was at a conference recently, and somebody had said, if somebody has a question, they're stuck. If they have a question, they're stuck at a point. And so what I really wanted to do was just to be able to answer any questions that you might have, answer any questions that I have seen in my sort of travels as talking to people, leading sessions and things like that, and really just to provide anything that might support you as you either as a consultant are creating strategies with people and want to benefit from some shared experience, whether that's you as a senior leader who is leading a team and trying to get everybody engaged, or you're just at the beginning stages of your strategic planning process and just sort of wondering, like, how do I start? We've put a lot of different webinars around the strategic planning process, and there's a lot of stuff on YouTube SME Strategy around the process itself. But today was really to answer some of those nitty-gritty questions that might not be like as general. I mean, they are general, but some people have like a very specific question, and I really wanted to make sure that I answered them. And I'd like to do these more frequently. So if you think they would be helpful, or I'd love your feedback at the end of the meeting to say, these type of question and answer events are helpful. So please do them again. So really just answering any questions that you're dealing with. So if you have a question, if you're going through something in your strategy, if you're stuck, or if somebody on your team is feeling stuck, please just put a mention in the chat box. I have a couple sort of loaded questions that people have asked in the past weeks and in preparation for today's webinar. So thank you for that. If you put your name in there and put your question in there, and then I'll leave time for some at the end. So we'll get into it. Basically the agenda, as I mentioned, 45-minute Q&A, enter any questions in the chat box. That way I can make sure I get them for you. A little bit about me. So I run a company called SME Strategy. We facilitate strategic planning sessions around Canada and the US, around the world, with about 500,000 readers per year on our blog. We work with government, schools, nonprofits, for-profits, so SMEs, small to medium enterprises. I've done about 75 strategic planning sessions in the last 12 months. I think I've done 8 in the past week and a half. And I've also written 2 books, so one on strategic planning and one on entrepreneurship. That's both so that I've written a book, but also if you'd like to buy a book, I'd love to sell you one. And then at SME Strategy as a company, we facilitate strategic planning and stakeholder engagement sessions. So if you're looking for somebody external to support you with that, we can do that. We support the execution of the plan through coaching and consulting. So once you've created the plan, then there's the stuff of actually getting it out into the world. And then we train teams on strategic planning, either through like one-day workshops, or we have a course online. So if you're looking to develop your strategic plan, you can check out our course. The other thing looking at doing, and again, I'd love your feedback as a reader, is we're thinking of building like peer groups online through Facebook, private peer groups, and then potentially doing like a weekly mastermind type thing. So for people that are leading strategies, actually have some ongoing support and a community around them to support the execution of the plan. So love your feedback on that, but let's get to the matter at hand. Why today's training? I talked a little bit about it before, but it's to really help all of you that have asked questions, and I haven't had a chance to make an individual video for each person. So I thought it'd be like, well, if it benefits one person, benefits everybody. But ultimately, all of those questions have to do with alignment. At SME Strategy, we're really big around alignment, making sure that everybody on your team is on the same page, and that everybody has that clear vision of success. If you don't have everybody on the same page, moving towards the same thing, then you're having waste. You're either having waste in double work, you're either having waste in terms of frustration and communication, you're either having waste in terms of one person's going one way or one person is going the other. And then ultimately, I believe, and from my experience, is that you and your team have a picture of success, whether it's stated explicitly or it's implied that you want to go to this place. And a strategic plan really just tries to put all of those individual pieces together to create one unified picture so that everybody can be successful. And so that's really why I wanted to make today available. I'm not trying to sell anything, not trying to do anything. I just legitimately want to help, and I know it'll help you. So let's get into it. So The first question that I got, and these are in no particular order, and again, please, if you have any questions, put them in the box, is how do I manage staff communication while balancing the daily operations? And so if we contextually set it up, you've created your strategic plan, you've probably done a bunch of workshops, and then, what is next? And I found that communication sort of has like three parts to it. One is, are you actually accomplishing the result you want out of the communication? I had a client who was saying, I sent emails, I sent emails, I sent emails, I sent meeting invites, and no answer. When we actually got to the event, the person said, well, I really wish I would have known about this. And it just means that the communication that you've put in place might not be sufficient to get the message. So one, is your communication actually accomplishing what you want it to accomplish? Two, do you have enough frequency to to accomplish what you want to accomplish? So is it enough to have a strategy meeting once a year, or do you need to put regular communication in place to support your organization? So when we think about communication, we want it to go top down and then bottom up, and then also across within the organization. And then the easiest thing I've found is, once you finish your strategic planning session, do a meeting about it at least every month, just to circle back, just to say, what did we do over the past couple of weeks? What are we doing in the next couple of weeks? And to keep everybody in the loop. The more frequent your communication, the easier it is to stay on top of things, and the less time like things linger on people's minds. And if you can put at least like an hour, or some people do daily huddles of 7 minutes, but if you can put some sort of structured communication in place that your people will know, that's the opportunity for them to communicate any sort of challenges. And you basically operationalize the strategic communication. You operationalize the strategic communication so that being in communication is actually part of the daily operation, and it becomes a priority. And when we did that with our organization, when we've done it with other teams, they just found that the morale went up, the sort of anxiety went down, and the performance went up, because people knew in that meeting we were talking about strategy, or we were talking about something intentional. Another really easy way to improve communication is put an agenda in your meeting, at least some structure, so you don't go around in circles, and then potentially an internal facilitator to stop you from going into rabbit holes, because that sometimes happens. Perfect. So, and by the way, if you are answering, Ahmed, I got your question here and I see it, so I'll be sure to answer it. I'm just going to go through a couple here. What are innovative ways to celebrate success? So I assume that the person who wrote this, and if they're on the message, please clarify, or in the chat, please clarify, you want to do something sort of cool and extra. And what I find that most organizations don't even do the basic levels of celebrating success. They're so focused on moving forward, that they don't actually acknowledge all of the things that they've done. And it can come in a lot of little ways. It's when somebody acts in line with your with the culture that you want, you can just acknowledge them, either privately or publicly. I have one of my clients that has this thing called a golden pineapple. And imagine this is a golden pineapple. Of course, it's just a bottle of water. That every time somebody does something good, they praise them, and then they pass on the golden pineapple, and it sits on their desks. And then the person who has the pineapple is allowed to sort of bestow it to somebody else to be able to like acknowledge them. Another thing that I've seen is an app called Bonusly, and Bonusly is an opportunity for you to say like, oh, here's like 200 points to go buy a Starbucks card, or if you get 1,000 points, you can buy ice cream for the office. So everybody is incentivized to celebrate success in that. So that's like an individual success. But I think that, at a very basic level, if you as a team acknowledge people for doing the work that you want them to do, and just like verbally, it doesn't have to be complicated. It just needs to get done. So perfect is the enemy of good. And just acknowledging people, and everybody has a different level of acknowledgement that they want to hear, will make a big difference to your success and the team's ultimate engagement. So this was a great question I got. How do I manage disruption? And I alluded to it a little bit before in today's sort of preamble with what's happening with COVID and all of the sort of changes in the world. So a couple tools that we use within the strategic planning process, and you can find that within our template, is first we do a trend analysis to try to see where the things are what's happening in the world that we should be aware of. So try to, before we go out into our journey, we actually try to see, what's happening in the world, what trends are happening, what disruptions are already happening, so that we can predict them. Because if they've already happened, it's probably too late, or we're just going to be a late mover. As Wayne Gretzky says, go where the puck is going to be, not where the puck is. So how do you manage disruption is really think about where the puck is going to be, and how do you position yourself appropriately. And the other thing you can use is sort of like looking at a blue ocean, red ocean strategy kind of methodology. Red ocean being there's a lot of competition, a lot of challenges going on. Blue ocean being is where are the opportunities for us, where there is little competition. And a third tool that you can use is the business model canvas. I find it really cool because then you can basically take a look at your business and to see if it is sort of stacking up with the value that you want to provide for your customers. And if your customers or needs are changing, are your needs changing with the customer? The big example I use when we do a risk analysis or a trend analysis is Blockbuster. Blockbuster and Netflix both started in the VHS business. One of them delivered it, one of them you had to go in store. The Netflix ultimately adjusted to what trends are happening in the world, and they took advantage of the trend, whereas Blockbuster, resisted the change and didn't move forward, and sort of the rest is history. So blue ocean, red ocean, business model canvas, trend analysis, and then as part of every strategic planning session we do a risk analysis, because the risk analysis is always against the vision that we want to accomplish. So if we know where we want to go, what are the things that are going to get in the way? And disruption could be a thing. So then we say, well, what do we need to do to mitigate disruption? Then obviously everybody's disruption is different. So figuring out what systems, processes, and communication you can put in place to stay on top of those things and be proactive instead of reactive. And by the way, I'm happy to dig further into any of these answers. Please shoot a message in the chat box. And then, yeah, we can move forward in that. One of the questions I got, I'm just going to go straight to the Q&A, is what is the difference between organizational development and change management? So I don't know what the actual literal dictionary definition is, so you'll have to forgive me. But as far as I see organizational development, I see that as what are the functions that you're putting in place to support the growth of your team and the growth of your people. Okay, so how are you basically elevating your people? Whereas change management is really against a thing that you're trying to accomplish, and people are resistant. As in, I want to lose weight, but I'm resistant to going to the gym. And so what I'm going to do, actually, really great question on it. So I'm going to stop the screen share. I'm going to share something else, and I'm going to hopefully give you, it's called the Cotter Change Model. And I found it a really useful tool to help people understand change management. And that's one of the things that's been coming up a lot, is that people have these really great strategies, strategic plans, but they don't actually know how to negotiate change. Now, some change models are more complex than others, but this is the number one thing that I found. So number one is establish a sense of urgency. This also applies to the disruption, by the way. Establish a sense of urgency. Why should we do this? Why should we do this now? 2, create a guiding coalition. So this potentially could be your leadership team. This could be a committee. This could be anybody whose sort of job it is to steer and navigate the change that you're going through in your organization. Number 3, develop a change vision. That's the number one thing that we do in our strategic planning sessions, is have a vision for the future that is different than where we are now. Number 4, which we're going to answer some questions about later, communicate a change vision for buy-in. So people need to buy into the vision before they change. If they don't see something for themselves within the strategy, they're not going to buy into it. So one of the other questions I got is, how can I protect my strategy from the threat of change from the CEO? And so they need to see themselves in your plan. They need to see what's in it for them within the strategy. And if they don't see something in it for them, or you don't see what they want, you don't have alignment. And that's why alignment is so important as we move through the strategic planning process. Because if you're not aligned, if your interests and their interests aren't aligned, then you're going to have some trouble and challenges. So it's really important that you take the time to align the different interests, the different needs, the different wants of your people as you go and communicate that change on an ongoing basis. Number 5 is empower broad-based action. So when you talk about developing the strategic priorities, how can other people contribute to it? As a senior leader, most people really want to like lead the strategy themselves and do all of the work. And I highly advise you not to do that, because when people feel like they're part of the strategy, then they're way more likely to actually do something about it. It's the difference between pushing the strategy on somebody, pushing the plan on somebody, and pull them into it. So Ahmed, similarly for you, if you can pull your CEO into the strategy that you've created, or if you are a senior team and you have a board, you want to pull the board into your strategy or align your strategy to their strategy. And once you can communicate that change vision, empower that broad-based action, you're going to have a lot more success as it comes to change. Number 6, generating short-term wins. That's how do you actually make those celebratable moments as a team so that progress starts to come. You know, if you have a 5-year strategic plan or a 4-year strategic plan, I don't want to have to be there for 4 years before I can actually see any progress being made. So what are some quick wins that you can put in place so that people actually see that there's progress being made as part of the strategy and not just this like hopeful thing that one day, someday we'll be able to move something forward. Number 7, never letting up. That means like continually pushing the change. Just because you've had a couple quick wins, just because you're seeing a couple new muscles, does not mean you can be like, okay, I deserve this, you know, sheet cake. It's you have to keep going with the actions, keep staying on top of the strategy. And then number 8, incorporating the changes into the culture. So that is one of the frameworks. The other framework is called ADKAR, ADKAR. I find ADKAR more complex, and this one's just really easy to develop, to execute, and to have people to understand. So Ahmed, I hope that gives you a good answer of the difference between change management and organizational development. You know, and I'm sure there's some overlaps, but change management is a very, very specific, a very, very specific thing. Perfect. So let me just go back to the PowerPoint here. By the way, are you guys, you know, is this valuable? Are you getting some stuff from this? Is this new? You know, just shoot me a message. Let me know how you're doing, because you know, sometimes when you're doing a presentation and you're just talking at people, you know, you'll get something out of it, but I really would love to hear what you're getting back. And if there's an opportunity for dialogue, happy to do that as well. But really just to make sure that all of you are getting as much value out of today and your attendance today as you had hoped. Perfect. Excellent. So how do I manage disruption? We talked about that a little bit. So this question, I wasn't totally sure what it meant, but I wanted to talk about it. And this is, what organizational cultures are supportive of strategic planning? So I know, Paul, you had a question similar to this, but this one is different. And I think it was around, how do you create a culture that supports strategic planning? So when we look at creating values and behaviors within an organization, we look at what are the values and behaviors that we have, and what are the values and behaviors that we want within our organization. And this sort of assumes that you haven't created formal values or formal value behaviors within your organization. So the way I look at values and behaviors is the way we do things around here. It's sort of like what you expect from your people and what you expect from your employees, either implicitly or explicitly. And a way to think about it is when you go to somebody's house and you take off your shoes, you know, is this the kind of culture that takes off their shoes when they come in the house? So I think any culture, if it's formalized, will help you execute your strategic plan. And here's why. When we do this exercise in our strategy sessions, we set our vision, we set where we want to go. We look at the values and behaviors that we have within an organization, good and bad, good and bad. We look at the values and behaviors that exist in our top performers, like our A players. What are the things that our A players embody within our organization, and what makes them successful? But more importantly, if we were a coach and we were trying to find those players and duplicate their skill, what would we look for? And then we say, out of all of those values and behaviors, what are the top 5 that we would want to foster and duplicate? By the way, there's a million ways to do this. This is just the way we do it. And then we pick the top 5 values, and then we say, okay, if we had duplicated the top 5 values and behaviors of all of our A players, what would that do for our organization? And often, almost every time, the values and behaviors, if they were lived fully, if everybody was being what was important to the organization, then the people in the session can actually see the vision being accomplished without even having a plan. So just having the values, being like, if everybody was cooperative, open, honest, teamwork, everybody has similar but different things. But if everybody had the values that we want, if everybody replicated our A players, then we could accomplish our vision. We don't even need a plan per se. A plan will help. But that's why it's been famously said that culture eats strategy for breakfast. So if you have the culture that you want, you can accomplish your vision. Similarly, if you have the opposite of the culture you want, nothing is going to happen and nobody wants to work there. And rarely is it so extreme, but often there are a handful of people within your organization that are actually counterculture, and they pull your plan back. So it's important to first identify what the culture is, and 2, like, communicate it, and then 3, see if there's anybody who doesn't align with that culture. Okay, I'm going to answer Kamal's question here. How do you answer to those people that said that strategic planning is just theory? We need a tactical plan. They want tangible. Awesome. That happens a lot. I think I have a question in here in terms of, people being burnt by strategic planning. We've done that before. And I'd love to see if I know there's a little hand up feature. You say who has heard that before, strategic plan. And I think I have that question in here. So I'm just going to find it right here. So this is really the question, Kamal, that hopefully aligns with what you're saying, is how do you balance big picture thinking with producing results? And it's the balance between vision and action. The big picture thinking versus what are we going to do today and tomorrow. Now, I've used this a lot, but in Alice in Wonderland, there's a scene in the book or scene in the movie where Alice gets to a fork in the road. And then she asks the Cheshire Cat, which road should I take? And then he says, well, where are you trying to get to? And then she says, I don't know. And then he says, well, then any road will get you there. And I find humans, like the human being that we became, loves doing stuff. They just love doing stuff. They love doing stuff. They love doing stuff. But if you don't have a big picture why behind why you're doing it, then none of it makes a difference. So it's important, Kamal and others, to both set the big picture vision. Where do we want to be in 3 years? Where do we want to be in 5 years? How will we actually know if we're there? And then break it down into the individual steps and say, here's what we're going to do over the next 3 months, over the next 6 months, over the next 12 months. One of the tools that you can use is like a Gantt chart. So a Gantt chart will help you lay out all of the individual steps that you need to do with the timelines around it. You could use a balanced scorecard, which will help you track and measure the goals as well as the initiatives. But I think the big fallacy in strategic planning, there's a couple, but one of the big ones is not having your vision be aligned with your action plan. So taking a step back, there's 3 levels of alignment when we look at creating a strategic plan. There's alignment at the leadership team level, making sure that everybody on the leadership team level is aligned around the vision. Are we all going to the same place? 2 is alignment with the strategy and the alignment with the strategy and the vision. And somebody just told me that we're freezing, so hopefully there's not too much technical problem, but please let me know if there's any challenges there. And I apologize in advance if there is. So alignment with the leadership team, alignment with the vision and the strategy, and then alignment with the rest of the organization. Are we doing the things that are necessary to get us to where we want to go? So if you're having a gap, or if you're experiencing a gap, or if people are saying that there's a frustration between that, consider that there's not a clear pathway between where we want to go and how we're going to get there. And that can be because if you don't follow the right process in setting up your strategic plan, you're thinking too big picture and you're not thinking in terms of producing results. The other challenge, by the way, can you guys still hear me? Just to make sure that the connection is still there. Of course, it's a webinar, so I can't tell where you guys are at. Okay, perfect, thank you. The other big challenge with strategic plans is that you might have a big picture thinking, and then you might have the actions, like the individual things, the tasks that you're going to do. But if you don't have the specific measurable goals, you guys are setting yourselves up for failure. So you might have strategic priorities, or you might have like conceptual goals, but if you can't measure it, you're going to be setting yourself up for failure because you've never actually set yourself up for success. You know, if I say I want to lose weight, does losing weight mean 1 ounce or 1 pound, or does it mean losing 20 pounds? And similarly for your team, if you have different members of your team and one person thinks success is $10 million in revenue and another person thinks success is $5 million in revenue, you guys are playing very different games. And it's not that one goal is more or less valid than the other. It just means you need to realize that, that you have different objectives. So that goes back to the alignment. That goes back to making sure that you know what everybody's goals are so that you can manage the big picture thinking with the producing results, and making sure that strategic planning is actually a tool and not theory. And the last piece I'll say about tool and theory is that strategic planning and strategies are about choices. It's equally about what not to do as it is about what to do. And once you can really get good at choosing what you're not going to do, that's when strategic planning is really powerful. Because instead of trying to get 100 things done or 10 things done poorly, you get 4 things done really well, and then you move on. And that's when you can start seeing results. That's when people actually see the value in strategic planning, and when they also see that culture development. One question I got from Paul: most leaders in general firefight and not strategize. How to get leaders out of firefighting mode and into working on the business rather than in the business. You know, for us, we're in the strategic planning business, and offsites are the main thing. And it's about dedicating the time to actually do it. But then you also have to have that sort of desire to work on the business. And often it's, you know, either people have been spinning their wheels, like you said, they haven't been able to produce the results. There's maybe some frustration, you know, things are starting to build up, that they haven't had a chance to step back on. So you sort of have to, unfortunately, have to have somebody who's willing to have that conversation. Or what also happens to us, and which is great, is that people who have done strategic planning talk to their peers and say, this was a really valuable exercise for us. You know, it was hard to get away for a day or 2 days or 3 days. It was tough because we still, like, work didn't stop, but the value that we got out of it outweighed the costs drastically. And so, you know, having leaders talk to other leaders who have done strategic planning or think strategically versus operationally is really helpful. But, you know, Paul, you hit it on the nail on the head, is like working on the business and in the business. And then the other thing with strategy is that, yes, it takes time, but if it's done well, it will give you greater capacity. You know, the strategic work that you do helps you create more time and space to accomplish what you want to accomplish, not less. It's about finding points of leverage and opportunities to expand where you're at. So hopefully that helps, Paul. And again, anybody else has any question, happy to answer anything else. So, and then the other piece, so Paul had another question, and it's in here as well, around the difference in cultures. And everybody has, so whether you have a homogeneous culture, everybody's from North America, or everybody's from Scranton, or everybody's from Dubai, or you have 10 different people from 10 different countries and 10 different cities and 5 different generations. Everybody thinks they're right. And because of their perception, everybody is right. And that as you're trying to get alignment with a team, it's not about where we agree per se. It's about where we can align. As in, if you're trying to go to a restaurant with a big group of people, you might not necessarily think, oh, I want to go for sushi, but I can get behind it. Or, oh, that one's a little bit far, but okay. You're sort of making compromises and trade-offs, which is the nature of strategy. So that when you talk about cultures, values, and behaviors, it's both about alignment and not necessarily agreement, and then moving from implied to explicit so that nobody has to sort of guess what the rules are. Even if you have everybody has a different sort of background or sense of what things should be like or what they are. If you can set a new set of rules for your group, it'll level set the expectations. And I find that the biggest source of frustration in human beings is not actually in the thing that happens. It's the expectation that came with it. They had a different expectation than what actually happened. So the frustration comes with the expectation. One thing I was sharing with a group yesterday was, and you can ask yourselves this. So I really challenge you to ask yourselves this and ask this of your teams. Would you play a game where there was no scoreboard and there were no rules? Or more precisely, you didn't know what the score was and you didn't know what the rules were. And some people might say, yes, I would totally play that game because you're like a kid. Would you play that game for long? And often organizations, without a clearly defined strategy, without clearly defined rules, without clearly defined culture, it's exactly what they're doing. They're playing a game, the game of work, with no scoreboard because there's no goals, and no rules because there's no culture explicitly created. And that's why you have, 2/3 of people who are actively disengaged in their work because they don't know how to win. And how long would you play a game if you couldn't win? And so regardless of your culture, regardless of your background, regardless of your team, if you don't have rules, guidelines like dictating the game and having people be successful, they're going to quit. They're going to leave. They're going to be frustrated. No one's going to want to play. And that's what happens when you start seeing apathy, resistance, like people leaving managers, is because they just don't know how to be successful. So if you can create your own culture within your team, forming, storming, norming, performing, adjourning, I'll say that again, forming, storming, norming, performing, adjourning, which is when you leave. If you can go through that step in creating a functional culture, regardless of your background or experience, it'll help your team get to a higher level of performance. Another tool that you can use for that is like a project charter. Project charters are sometimes more complex than they need to be, and they're typically for like high functioning organizations that are used to that kind of stuff. But you can use it as a framework to help set the norms and expectations with your team so that everybody is clear on what they need to do. Okay, hopefully that helps. So let's go back here. Okay, this is a really fun question, actually. So what kind of documents, work plans do I need? And so this varies by organization. So you might have been in a position where somebody's delegated you a strategic plan and you're saying, well, okay, I need to do something. They want some sort of deliverable. So first deliverable typically is a strategic plan document, which includes vision, mission, values, strategic priorities, sometimes an action item or action item. You can go to SME Strategy, sample strategic plans to see an example of 10 or 15 plans that we've pulled through 2020. So you can get an idea of what that deliverable could be. You may be asked to do like a balanced scorecard. You may be asked to do like a dashboard. You might be asked to do like a one-page strategic plan. Again, vision, where are we going? Mission, what is the purpose of our organization? How are we getting there? Strategic priorities, where are we going to focus on? You might need to do something like a risk register. We have a strategic plan template workbook that's like a fill in the blanks for this. And I'm just getting the final links ready for that. So it's available widely because we used to sell it. Now we're going to give it away for free. But that might be helpful. But one of the things I wanted to show you really quick was, actually, there's two things I wanted to show you. So one is this goal setting template that we've put together that might be helpful to you in terms of what is the deliverable. So, so it's inspired by the balanced scorecard. Okay, so the balance scorecard had these objectives on the far left and had it in several different categories. But we're looking at this in terms of how to help you set better goals. So objective is like the qualitative thing that you're trying to accomplish. Increase market share, for example. Measure, how would you measure it? Okay, so you could measure increased market share in terms of percentage. You could measure it in terms of people. You could measure it in terms of revenue. You can measure it in a lot of different ways. So you just have to figure out how you want to measure it. Targets, what is the actual thing that you're aiming for? If it's percentage, is it 80%? If it's revenue, is it $5 million? If it's people, maybe it's 3,000 people. And then the initiatives are those action items. What are the things that you're going to do to drive the target to have you accomplish the objective? And so if you don't have specific measurable goals in your organization, you're going to fail in your plan because there is no way of being successful, because everybody has a different interpretation of what success looks like. And when you put it in terms of numbers, numbers don't lie. And you do goal setting in your life. You just don't do it in terms of your strategic plan. You might think of like how much money I want in my retirement account, or I want to do 10,000 steps today, or I want to make sure I only eat 2,000 calories, or in my case, like 3,000 or 4,000, whatever it is. I want to make it to the gym 3 times a week. I want to watch all 3 Star Wars movies this weekend. You know, that's just goal setting. And now you need to put goal setting in the context of your strategic plan and how it relates. So the other thing I wanted to share, and hopefully I can find it, is Cascade Strategy. And hopefully, there we go. I hope this is the right screen. All right, we're just going to do it this way. As you can see, it's very, very high tech, everyone. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen. This is Cascade Strategy. They're one of our partners, okay? And this is their strategic plan software. And it's really helpful because it helps you visualize your strategic plan. And so if you're looking for a dashboard that people can track, for tracking your strategic plan, you have your vision here, you have your values here, so everybody knows where we're going. You have objectives, like things that you're trying to accomplish. You can actually measure it, so you know if you're behind on track or not. You can see, you know, in this case, the revenue you're trying to get to $42 million. You're at 26 million, so you're more or less on track based on the time. And this is a potential deliverable that you can provide because it shows everybody where what you're trying to accomplish within your strategic plan. You have your focus areas, you have your objectives, you have your KPIs, and then you have your projects. The projects are the individual to-dos that you're putting in place to move the plan forward. So in terms of what are the potential deliverables you could put together, this is something that we highly recommend to organizations. One, because it reduces the reporting time required. 2 is that it has a dashboard that everybody can see. And 3, the way it's built, like you can't escape the goal setting structure. It's designed in a way that you can sort of fandangle around it, but it's designed to really help you with the goal setting because it's more than this is good, less than this is bad, less than this is good, more than that is bad. And so you have to think about goal setting in that. And it allows everybody to work together, to work collaboratively. It's faster than Excel. It's cleaner. We like it. They'll give you a 2-week demo, they'll give you a free demo and give you a 2-week trial if you want to test it out. I thought it was really reasonable price-wise. Just mention us because it always helps to refer friends, and they'll probably give you some extra service and support you with any questions. They're really good of our friends and our readers and things like that. So okay, going back to our question. So that's going to the work plans, documents that you might need. That is one of them. And I find it just really helpful to be able to visualize that, to be able to share it, to be able to have everybody know what you want to accomplish and what success looks like. How to balance big picture thinking. We talked about that one. How can strategic planning be effective for nonprofits? Strategic planning is so important for nonprofits because nonprofits, like most for-profits, don't have unlimited time, money, and energy. And so even if you have limited resources, strategic planning is about making the most with what you do have. So if you can figure out where you want to focus, where you're going to choose not to do, As a nonprofit, you're going to have a greater impact and you're going to accomplish what you want to accomplish. And that's one of the main reasons I got into strategic planning, was because I worked on a lot of nonprofit boards and they were trying to accomplish so much, but they tried to do a lot of different things. And so they felt like they weren't making the progress that they wanted. So instead of trying to do a lot of different things and make a little bit of progress, we did a couple things. We did them really well. It helped us maximize our budgets. It helps us maximize our impact and really help the people we wanted to help, so that we could focus on our mission and purpose, which is the reason for existing in the first place. And the name of that dashboard was Cascade Strategy. Perfect. So that's a question there. Chat, anything else? Okay, so I'm just looking at the chat box. Theoretical, perfect. Objectives, 8-step process. Yeah, so Janelle, perfect. This question was for you. Is leading a strategic planning for a nonprofit, little money, is just focus on what success looks like. Focus on the couple things that you could do. Where are you going to get the biggest points of leverage? And then like be smart with it. Do like guerrilla type stuff. If you a team that really cares about what they're doing and is clear on what success looks like, is going to really focus on what's most important, not just stuff when it like keeps you busy. So strategic planning is super valuable for nonprofits. And if you are a nonprofit, send me a message. I will send you our strategic plan workbook, because that'll give you the framework for your meeting so you don't mess around wasting a bunch of time. And if you have any one-on-one questions, happy to answer that, because really we just want to help nonprofit orgs and mission-based organizations. How do you handle change within a complex cultural environment? Paul, this was your question actually. But the change management, the clear culture rules, and communication. You know, some people in organizations are holding on to stuff from years and years ago. And the way to diffuse that is communication. Communication can solve most problems. Now, you can over communicate for sure, but it's important that you aren't just communicating out at them, but you're actually hearing. A really good leader will be really intuitive at not only listening to their people, but actually understand what's going on to them. And that in those like high change moments, you want to listen to how people are reacting to the change. Often it's not actually the thing that's happening, it's how they're reacting to it. And if you can be understanding of their reaction, doesn't make it right, doesn't make it wrong, you just need to really get where they're at and then say, okay, cool, well, here's what we're trying to accomplish. Like, where are you at? I get that that's where you're at. You know, here's how I can imagine you're feeling. And often they just want to feel heard, and you sort of have to diffuse the emotional part. For better or worse, human beings are emotional beings. And if you can sort of get them to sort of reset emotionally, because they're going to get overworked, they're going to get anxious, they're redlining because they're trying to do as much as possible with like not enough resources most of the time. So I get where you're at. Cool. How can I help? Oh, you know what? I just need to talk about it. Or actually, what would really help is I need to work on this. Okay, cool. How can you be a partner with your people? How can you get aligned and really get what's important to them? And when you can align their initiatives and what's important to them with what's important to your organization, that's how you're going to win. And that's why everything we do is about alignment. So hopefully that helps. Got time for like maybe one more questions. If you have any others, just put them in there. So this was, how do you deal with difficult management? And then the sub question was, who aren't clear on strategic planning? You can hire me. No, you can hire me. You can hire any facilitator. I'm sure they're very good. But the key part is, if they're difficult, why are they difficult? So again, it goes back to the communication. Is you might have a belief around the reason they are the way they are, but have you actually taken the time to be curious about where they're at, what's important to them, what their concerns are, anything that's happening? Because if you actually take the time one-on-one, it takes more time because you actually have to like be with them. But in the long run, it's better because it's going to diffuse them from like poisoning other people. And that's where bad cultures start, is because people are difficult and then they are causing problems like systemically. And then it gets worse and worse. And sometimes people don't even know why those problems happened in the first place. The other thing is, we have a video on strategic planning. It's 11 minutes long. It's the entire process. It's on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube. And it'll guide you through the process. if people are frustrated with strategic planning, it's because there's no rules, there's no framework. So we've tried to make a really easy framework to guide people along that process, and seems to work for us. And that was really the end of the webinar. You know, again, just wanted to iterate that strategy is a phased approach. So you want to assess, plan, align, execute, measure, and keep redoing it. So it's not like a one-time activity; it's an ongoing process. And then, you know, there's stages to it. So ideally, after a strategic planning session, you have everybody where they're at. The next level would be getting alignment and making sure that everybody has staff, like action items, and you're starting to work on that culture transformation. And then the sort of holy grail of performance management is there at the, like having everybody be part of that. So it's 10:45. I'm happy to oh, perfect. I'm happy to answer any other questions. I'm happy to hang around a little bit more if you have any other questions. But yeah, I hope that was helpful. I hope that was useful. You know, if you want to chat about your strategic plan, we can definitely do that, because we're here to help, here to answer any other questions that you might have. Yeah, just reach out to us, and we're definitely. Oh, I guess you can't see my screen still, so that's cool. Yeah, just happy to help any way that I can. I'd love your feedback. If you have a quick minute to send some feedback in the chat box, would be great. Just say, hey, how was today? As I mentioned, really looking for any other opportunities we can to support you, to answer any questions that we can, to support what's important to you, what you have questions around, what you're dealing with. And then, of course, if there's any sort of products or services that we can put in the market that will help you, whether that's that mastermind program I was talking to you about before, whether that is you know, chats, anything else that would help, we definitely want to help. So would love your feedback just as you sign off. But that's really everything for today. Thank you for joining. Once again, Anthony Taylor from SME Strategy, and would love your feedback. Thanks for being here, and I'll hang around a little bit more in case there's any other questions that come through the chat. Awesome, everyone. Well, I super appreciate you being here. Thanks for sharing your Monday, or I don't even know what today is, Wednesday morning with me. It was really great. And do visit SME Strategy for more information on strategic planning or anything else that that you might need. All right, take care, everyone. Have a wonderful day.